Good evening. I am really excited about tonight. I'm so glad that you decided to spend the evening here with us, and I'm really proud to be continuing our partnership with one of the most creative and virtuosic, one of the most adventurous, one of the most generous collectives of artists, the International Contemporary Ensemble. Are some of you all fans of ICE? Me too. My name is Evan Leslie. I'm the artistic producer here at the Library for the Performing Arts. Welcome to Lincoln Center. If you didn't know, you happen to be sitting in one of the world's great archives of the performing arts. So in this building, we've got Beethoven manuscripts and Bach manuscripts, and I know some of you might be here from League of American Orchestras. We've got Mahler manuscripts. We've got Toscanini's annotated scores. We've got John Cage manuscripts. We have one of the largest archives of recorded sound in the world. And tonight, you're actually going to be participating in a very exciting archiving project. Of course, all of those masterpieces, it's wonderful for us to provide a safe home for them, holy relics of the performing arts. But what's really special about our archives, if you open any of our archival boxes, what you really see is the way artists work. And you can learn about how artists solve problems, about how artists positively collaborate with other people, how artists can see in the world around them meaning and beauty and find inspiration in places where other people might have missed it. And so tonight we are really excited to share with you an ascendant composer who is so inventive and so collaborative, and reveal a little bit not only the beauty of and the inventiveness of her work, but also share a little bit about how that work is created. We're going to be collecting those performances. You can see there's cameras around here and microphones. We're also going to be collecting your response to that music. Because these new works, that's part of collecting a contemporary archive. Ashley Fure is here. We're so thrilled and honored to welcome her to this library stage where we can start to collect her work and also your reaction to it and the beautiful performances of ICE. So please help me welcome to the stage, ICE.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here. As Evan said, it's a really wonderful treat to share an archiving process with you. ICE is really dedicated to its archive. About 5 years ago, we started our online library, which is called digitice.org, and it's a collection of hundreds of works. ICE is completely committed to documentation, so much so that we have a comprehensive approach. Every concert we do is documented, and if the pieces turn out the way we want them to, then they are added to this huge archive. And so I encourage you to explore more about ICE on digitice.org. Tonight, we're going to explore the work of Ashley Fure with you all and with your feedback and thoughts and questions. We're going to look to two pieces. So instead of a large program of several works, we're going to focus really closely on two works. The first is a trio called Therefore I Was from 2012. And the second piece, Shiverlung 2, is actually brand new. This is so new that it's not even a premiere, it's a pre-premiere. It's a little confusing, but we are actively building a new piece for percussionists and loudspeakers, and we're going to bring you into the process of building that piece tonight. And this is all a part of a larger series at the library. We started with Anna Thorvaldsdottir in September. We premiered a new work of hers on this stage. In late December, we commemorated and had a memorial of Pauline Oliveros, who passed away in November. We had many of her longtime friends here on the stage, and all of it is, as Evan says, recorded and documented so that it can be added to the library's rich archive. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ashley. I have to climb into this sort of percussion array over here. So, Ashley Fure.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you, Ross. Thank you, Evan, and New York Public Library for having us. This is actually my very first time in this building, I'm embarrassed to say, so I'm thrilled to be here. So as Ross mentioned, and as perhaps some of you have experienced before, this is going to be a fun and informal interchange and exchange. My goal for this first just 5 minutes or so is actually to introduce you to the piece that you're about to hear, which is the finished piece on the program. As Ross said, I wrote it in 2012. I'm going to tell you a little bit about where it came from, what it means to me, and then we're actually going to do something unusual for a concert. We're going to play 2 short excerpts of the piece. I want to use these as a chance to sort of open a window into some of my thought process and some of the sounds that you're going to experience. Use those as, we'll talk about them just briefly, and then I'll sit down, join you in the fun seats, and they will play through the whole piece, and then we'll talk some more about it. And would love to hear your reactions, get your questions, any feedback. That's the structure. So, Therefore I Was, to move to a more somber note, actually comes out of a very specific experience, a very specific trauma I watched my grandmother go through. She battled with Parkinson's for about 15 years before she passed away last year. I hope none of you have ever seen this up close, but perhaps some of you have. Parkinson's is a particularly brutal disease because it manifests as though it's a problem of the muscles, as though the body doesn't work. But in fact, the body works, and the brain works. The brain knows exactly what it wants to do. The body can do it. It just can't pass the message from intention to execution. It's actually a problem of the nervous system. So it produces a very intense psychological and physical struggle where the simplest of activities, grabbing a pencil, stepping down a curb, become this site of a kind of psychological warfare, a struggle of mind over matter and of the mind's attempt to control the body and escape the body. I watched my grandmother fight with this for, as I said, 15 years, and it was particularly brutal around the time I was coming to this piece and working on it. You're going to see that struggle manifest in a few ways. You'll see it partly in the way Mike's limbs don't quite work the way they're supposed to work on the cello. The bow is moving behind the fingers. The elbows are wildly kind of out of control. The hair of the bow pulls diagonally instead of perpendicularly across the strings, all the ways that it would normally move in order to create a clear tone, a clear musical thought. You're going to hear it also in the general energy, the sort of archetypes of energy that happen in the piece. The piece really moves between a few different states. It starts in this kind of clawing, striving, anxious realm, and it maintains this as though it's just iteratively reaching for some kind of stability, trying to speak some simple, clear tone, and it can't quite get there. It moves between those periods of exhaustive striving, and then it at times falls into exhaustion. So it moves from kind of anxious to a type of exhaustion which is in the beginning of the piece really ethereal and atmospheric. It's an exhaustion of fragility, a sudden kind of stillness. But you'll watch as the piece progresses, that exhaustion kind of dip into the detuned fourth string of the cello, and it moves from the air to this very earthbound sonic region. The first little excerpt we're going to show you is from toward the end of the piece, and it really captures that progression I just described. We start in a moment of stillness, a kind of thin wisp of sound, and then it claws back into this anxious striving, and then eventually dips into the nether regions of the cello and the percussion. Thanks, guys. Ross and Cory and Mike. Great. One other excerpt I wanted to use as a window into what you're about to hear comes from earlier in the piece. In addition to these kind of two poles of exhaustion and the striving that happens between them, you're also going to hear sounds that are really dry. It's sort of like the whole ensemble is trying to walk together in this very awkward gait. Like one of them's a muscle and one's a joint and one's a bone, and they just can't quite get into sync. They'll start in this kind of metric dry space, and then you'll watch as, or you'll watch and hear little bursts of color start to open. There are kind of sudden alignments that occur in this piece where just for a minute we reach a more harmonic ground, where the resonance of the piano is released, where the resonance of the spring drum that Ross is going to be pulling here is finally released, and where the cello just for a moment finds a pitch that sits comfortably and beautifully within the rest of the body of the ensemble. Thanks, guys. So I think that's actually it as far as a preamble. If you have any questions about any of that or anything you hear next, we would love to answer them in about 14 minutes when this ends.
you all so much. That was really fun to run through. And we've been working on this piece for about a week, and each time we go through it, I think I find something new, some sort of way that each little instrument or object becomes a microcosm for the whole work. So I know I have lots of questions for Ashley, but I'm wondering if any of you might also have some thoughts, reactions, or questions, and we'll put Ashley in the hot seat. Yes, please. Martha.
Gonna get off easy. There's no actual preparation in that. There's nothing stationary in the piano, but there are implements, credit card.
Actually, it's a Chipotle card, let's be clear.
Chipotle card.
He's been outed.
One free burrito every time I play this piece. Which gets these amazing sounds that Ashley's figured out. There's also some rolls of tape for this, and a CD case.
CDs were these things that played music for a couple decades.
No, I'm not doing it.
You can't hold a mic and do this technique. Yeah. Well done. Yes, please.
When I would get frustrated practicing the cello, I could make a lot of those same sounds. How did you come up with the notation so Michael knows what to play, or any of them?
That's a great question. There tend to be two different categories of notation. So traditional notation is what we call descriptive notation. It describes the sound we want to hear. So if you think about a D sharp, it's written the same way whether it's written for a violin or a clarinet, right? Descriptive notation doesn't tell you how to press the keys to produce the D sharp. It tells you, I want D sharp, and you have to figure it out. The kind of sounds that I'm drawn to don't take so well to symbolic notation like that, to being reduced to a symbol that describes how they sound. So I tend to take what's called a prescriptive notational approach. So instead of describing the sound, I prescribe the action. So the notation for that part is really a lot more like notating choreography. It's about notating pressure, speed, the movement of the bow, the placement of the bow. I try to also include traditional symbols of dynamics and expressive notations that capture the sounds I'm after. I often do a lot of live demos, much to the chagrin of my instrumentalists, whose instruments I have to borrow for the demos, and often include videos with notation when I send a score along to players. So it's much more about choreography than describing precise results.
I can confess that I received a video from Ashley last week describing both how to play the cardboard box and the small metal box on glass tile instrument. The videos were not only very informative, but warned me of the pitfalls of both instruments, because if you treat the cardboard box like a cardboard box, it won't have an instrumental quality, and so the sort of attention to detail that Ashley puts into the notation and into her descriptions of the techniques has been a transformative experience for me and my cardboard box playing. So, who's
Glad
next?
to be a service, Ross.
Yes, please.
Thank you for the piece. It was great. And I'm curious if it was helpful and interesting to hear how your own life circumstance fit into the creation of it. I assume most of the time it gets done, you're not going to be standing there to tell that story. But I wonder how you think about the piece separate from your own experience with audiences, and does it matter to you whether or not they know that story?
It's always an interesting question. Thanks for the question. So usually I would include a program. Oh yeah, definitely. So if I can try to recap, the question was, I'm not always here sitting on the edge of the stage with a microphone explaining the story. And I think part of the implication is that's my relationship to the piece. Is there room for other people's relationship to the piece who either don't know the story or who have a different reaction, which doesn't necessarily fit where it came from for me. I always find this a quandary. So normally I would include a program note, which would be in the printed program. I don't think that that's in this, which partly opens that door for an audience if they want to walk through it. I'm always torn between not at all wanting to prescribe that there's only one way to listen to this piece. I'm torn between that instinct, which wants to leave the audience to have their own reaction, and the opposite impulse, which is trying to offer, as I said before, a kind of window into the piece, a way to understand why these strange sounds and these, at times, really grating and harsh and visceral gestures have been put together. So I try to find a middle ground. My program notes tend to be somewhat informative and somewhat poetically opaque. And somewhere in that poetry, I'm trying to give you a sense of it from my ears and from my perspective, but hopefully leave room for your own reaction as well.
So I imagine that you have a vast collection of sounds in your head that you work from. But when you're composing and you want to make a new sound, and it's not in your catalog, do you first think, could I possibly get a cellist to make that sound? Or do you first go and say, I want to use a cardboard box, or I want to find something brand new. How do you go about figuring that out?
Yeah, also a great question. I think I always have some kind of, it's a little bit like the scientific method maybe. So I have a hypothesis. I have a type of interaction that I'm looking for. And I don't always know what's going to get me that type of sound. Sometimes I have free reign in terms of which instruments I'm going to be writing for. Sometimes I'm constrained to, right now I'm writing a string quartet, for example. So that does kind of constrain the field or the territory in which I'm experimenting. But oftentimes, I'll be looking for a specific kinetic reaction, a specific kind of chaotic, rhythmic environment, for example. And I'll have a hypothesis, such as I had for a piece I wrote called Ply. It was a collaboration with a choreographer. And I knew that I wanted, just to tell you a story of kind of how this process might work, or sometimes works. I had been working before this piece Ply with what I would call chaotic timbres. So these rich, volatile harmonic sounds that have lots of frequency content, but that aren't strictly controlled, like the D sharp I keep battering. I don't have anything against D sharps, but they keep coming up. But in the piece I was working on with this choreographer, I knew I wanted to translate that interest in chaotic acoustic matter, or these rebellious sounds, into a chaotic rhythmic environment, into some kind of, intricate polyrhythmic activity that I could influence and kind of harness, but not directly metronomically control. So that's what I was looking for. How am I going to get those sounds? The hypothesis I had was, well, I need a kinetic plectrum. So that's a plectrum, a thing you hit something with, a thing you pick a guitar. A guitar pick is a plectrum. That's usually usually they're inert, right? The plectrum is inert, the percussionist picks it up, plucks the string, bows the cardboard box, that's how it sounds. I thought, well, I'm looking for this kind of chaotic rebellion in this sound and in this rhythmic environment. I need a plectrum that moves by itself. So I had my father help me pry open a big vent fan, a big rotary fan. So we took the cage off of it, and I taped rubber bands, like strings of elastic, to each of the fins of the propeller. And I brought this to Paris with me, where I was making the piece, and I spent about 3 weeks banging those little rubber bands against all sorts of objects and recording about 36 hours of audio, I think, some of which was on traditional instruments, some of which was on strange objects. The way that works, I would put it on its back, and it was spinning. And for example, I would take two objects like this, and the rubber band would hit those objects, but depending on their spatial relationship, the polyrhythms that would emerge, the patterns that would emerge from this kinetic plectrum were always evolving, but they were evolving in this fluid and strange way that I could manipulate but not directly dictate. I also tried it on string instruments. I have a hot pink what's the word I'm looking for? Like a glittery violin that I got with reward points from my Visa card about 7 years ago, which I also brought to Paris, which I detuned. So I had the violin laid on its back on the side, and I was kind of changing the pitch a little bit, but then I had the propeller in my right hand, and it was spinning like this, playing it. And it sounds like a bluegrass player with 37 arms and 12 fingers on each. It's just this really rapid and strange and always evolving rhythmic and pitch pattern that comes out, because that was a pitch source. So that's an example of, I didn't really know that was gonna work. I hacked open the fan in Marquette, Michigan, where I'm from, and I put it in my suitcase and brought it to Paris, where I tried it for the first time. Luckily, it worked really well, but it's always a process of like hands-on experimentation and figuring it out. It's like, oh, it sounds really good beating against glass, and I mean, I think I also had a baseball glove, like a bit, like piles of leathered things and strange other things I brought from Marquette. And I thought, oh, well, maybe I'll try it inside the piano if it works so well on the violin. Maybe I'll try it on a detuned electric guitar. And it's kind of it's a progressive understanding of a hypothesis. I test, I refine, I test, I refine. I always record. So there's this period of empirical research. I record it all. Then I step back, analyze what I've heard, look into these recordings, and try to develop structures out of them and try to understand how I might notate them and bring them into the bodies of other instrumentalists.
One of the great things about working with Ashley over the last year and a half or 2 years has been being in that process. And actually the second half of this event tonight, we're going to talk about this concept that you bring up. What's the origin story of the sound? How do you get from a concept in your brain, which the brain's ear isn't very sophisticated, I think, for most of us. For me, it's not. Most of the sounds that I discover and that we discovered together in this last 2 years have been trial and error, more on the error side.
Happy accidents.
Yeah,
right?
a lot of happy accidents. So we rely on discovery and time together in a collaborative environment to develop new sonic resources. And it doesn't always start with, I need a high frequency or I need something sharp and low. It might start with that, but then we realize that the object you were using can actually produce a beautiful, lush timbre. And so then you add that to your brain of sonic resources, and maybe it can come later. And the next piece that we'll talk about, this new work that we're building, is very much a process of that. So I think we'll say thank you to Mike and Cory and jump into the second half of our work.